Jaya Shriman Narayana. Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Jaya Shri Guru. Sanatana Dharma Jayate. Dharma Rashtra Jayate. International Sanatana Dharma Society Jayate. Om Hri Om. Namaste, everyone. It is absolutely my pleasure to be here with you today. And as people know, those individuals who have been here in the past, this is something that we do every Monday. This is a live stream satsanga. This is a spiritual gathering that is offered to you by the International Sanatana Dharma Society. And the International Sanatana Dharma Society itself is a worldwide movement that is dedicated to restoring the Vedic tradition, what is called Sanatana Dharma, what sometimes people will call by the misnomer Hinduism. And our goal is indeed to restore Dharma to this world in every single field of human experience. And indeed, that is what we're doing. And as a result, we are indeed the International Sanatana Dharma Society. We have people who watch this live stream from all throughout the world, multiple dozens of nations. But we also have a presence in multiple dozens of nations. We have our students all throughout the world in every single nation of Europe, North America, South America, throughout much of Asia, Australia, New Zealand, etc., and other places as well. So this is the movement that is indeed sponsoring what you are seeing right now. And before I begin, let me just say a few very quick things. First of all, if you have not yet done so, please subscribe to this channel as soon as you can. And also, please like this video because, of course, it helps with the algorithms. The more likes there are for this video, the more that it will be suggested for other people, and they too will have an opportunity to benefit from seeing this video. The other thing I want to say very briefly is that the International Sanatana Dharma Society, a nonprofit religious movement, a 501c3, what is termed a 501c3 in America, that is a nonprofit, we have begun our year-end fundraising campaign. As is true for many nonprofits, almost every nonprofit in existence, actually, especially in America, toward the end of the year, we have a fundraising campaign, and the idea is to indeed raise funds to continue with all the many projects that we're doing into next year. So this fundraising campaign actually began on the 4th, just a few days ago, and it actually began on Deepavali, this very, very important day of Deepavali, which I spoke about with our last live stream. And it will go on until midnight of December 31st. So again, our goal is indeed to raise as much money, as many donations as we possibly can in order to help the ISDS, again, into next year with all the many projects that we have going on. Indeed, we released a video, not on YouTube, but on all of our other platforms, not too long ago, a few weeks ago, called The Turning Point. And indeed, for the ISDS right now, I can tell you, it is indeed a turning point, as it is for the world. This is an extremely important time in world history, where what we are going to be seeing in the near future will be truly astounding. The world, as we know it, is going to change, and indeed the ISDS has been, is, and shall be a tremendous reason for why the world is indeed changing for the better. Not the only reason. There are many individuals contributing to this, many movements. but the ISDS, spiritually speaking, is on the forefront of bringing about a truly wonderful world and a golden age. To do this, as is true for any movement in existence, we need your help. We need donations, and I'm not going to shy away from saying this, because as I do not shy away from saying anything. Please donate if you can. If you can give $1, if you can give $5, if you can give 100, 1,000, 5,000, 1,000,000, please help us to restore Dharma to this world. The link will be in the chat for where you can go to help donate or to become even better, an ongoing member of the ISDS, where you're tithing every month. So, all that being said, let us now dive into what we're going to be doing today. And what we're going to be doing today is something different and special. And I've only done this once thus far with the live stream, to my memory, and that was with the Introduction to Sanatana Dharma book. But what we're going to be doing today is something a little bit similar to that, and that is we're going to be focusing on one of the books that is in fact put out by the ISDS. And what that book is Living Dharma. Living Dharma. This is a book that came out several years ago. It's not a brand new book. It came out a few years ago. And it is a book that consists of 400 aphorisms. Some of them are a little bit short. The vast majority of them are not. Some of them are a very big paragraph, even covering an entire page. But indeed, this is one of the books that the ISDS puts out. This book is available on Amazon. It's available through dharmacentral.com. If you go there, you'll see Living Dharma available. And what we're going to be doing today, very specifically, is focusing on this book by looking at several of the aphorisms. Now, again, there are 400. We're not going to do all 400 today. That would take a very long time. Instead, earlier today, I took some time and I picked out several of what I think are some of the more interesting aphorisms. But before we dive into that, let me just explain very, very quickly what this book is about. Again, it consists of 400 aphorisms, so it's an easy read, actually, but it's also a very inspirational read. This is the sort of book that is meant to be contemplative in nature. In other words, the idea is that with each aphorism, you are to read the aphorism, but then pause and contemplate what exactly was said in that aphorism, to think about it, to meditate upon it, etc. So that's the idea of the book itself. And interestingly, while certainly the foundation of everything that is in Living Dharma is spiritual, interesting when you look at the book and you look at the aphorisms, many people are astounded, actually. I've had a lot of feedback over the years about this book, and people are often astounded at how, unlike a stereotypical, let's say, book of spiritual aphorisms, this book covers dozens and dozens and dozens of different topics. Certainly, again, spirituality is the foundation, but it covers politics, it covers economics, it covers history, it covers science, it covers purvapakshas. That's a very technical philosophical term. That is, opposing views. It addresses atheism, it addresses Abrahamism, etc., etc. So the book itself is quite diverse. The aphorisms are quite diverse. Many of them, most of them, I would say all of them, are extremely inspirational in nature. But again, it's not your stereotypical book of spiritual aphorisms, where it's all just, let's say, positive affirmations. Again, they are positive, they are very affirming. But again, the number of topics and the diversity of topics that is covered is just truly astounding. So again, when you have a chance, please get this book, Living Dharma. And again, what we're going to be doing is going through several of these aphorisms, and I'm simply going to be reading them. However, I'm going to be reading them in such a way that after each aphorism, I am going to be silent for a few seconds, because again, the idea is to contemplate what was just said. So I would ask you, in this experience that we're about to have, to do precisely this. Approach this in a very contemplative sort of way. Listen to the words of these aphorisms, and then think about them in a very calm sort of way, listening to your breath while also listening to the aphorisms themselves. After we get through these aphorisms, I will do my best to leave time for questions and answers. So with that, let us proceed as I go through these aphorisms. And I'll also be giving you the numbers of these aphorisms because every single one of them is numbered from 1 to 400. So we will begin with 1, with the very first aphorism. And it proceeds thusly. Sanatana Dharma represents the loving grace of God, manifest in the material world, in the form of natural law. Natural law is how we experience God's grace within the material world. It is, therefore, by following God's natural law with dedication that we open ourselves up to the abundance of His divine grace. And it is by God's grace that we have the wisdom to fully know and honor His natural law. Dharma is God's rescue rope for all suffering beings, and the medium through which we can reconnect with Him. Dharma is God's gift to all creation. There is no greater means for knowing truth in this world. Very good. And now, aphorism 2. In order to experience the pure Atman, or soul, and to have a taste of the ecstatic bliss of self-realization and God consciousness, the Vedic scriptures advise us to pursue spiritual life in a systematic and disciplined way. We accomplish this by meditating daily on the divine names of God. Om Namo Narayanaya. By the spiritual practice of yoga, by studying God's sacred instructions, such as the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, and by cultivating such qualities as sincerity, humility, devotion, and compassion in our hearts. We must do this all under the guidance, the expert guidance of a qualified guru. This is the essence of the Vedic way. And now, aphorism 11. Our present materialistic culture has convinced too many of us that the entire world exists merely to serve our own personal needs. It does not. Rather, we ourselves exist for the sole purpose of serving God and serving our fellow living beings with compassion, patience, and love. It is in following such a life of selfless dedication to those who lay outside of ourselves that we come to know our true selves. And now, aphorism 14. The vast majority of present-day politicians and governments throughout the globe have now become the corrupt enemies of liberty and of the very people they falsely claim to represent. Such corrupt politicians and governments are serving the malevolent purposes of hidden interests and not those of the people. We must change this current course of corruption that our governments are steeped in. It is the sages and the seers who are the true leaders of society, and not corrupt politicians. The time has now come for sadhus, that is, sages, and virtuous yogis to guide the ship of state. Such dharmic governance would ensure the happiness and prosperity of all. May wise and compassionate yogis soon replace every corrupt politician upon the earth. Evam bhavatu. May it be so. Aphorism 15. People are living in a media-constructed version of reality, and not in reality itself. Reject the shackles of this artificially imposed reality. Reject the consciousness warping propaganda of the controlled media. Embrace instead the unalterable truth of your own eternal consciousness and of God's unlimited love. Reality is not the perverse nightmare that the media falsely portrays. Reality is sweet. Aphorism 21. Bhakti, devotional consciousness, is meditation in its fullest and deepest manifestation. It is through the process of bhakti that the veil of illusion is lifted from our eyes, and it is in the devotional state of bhakti consciousness that we know God most intimately. Bhakti represents the deepest communion between God and human. It is thus not merely a path to achieve liberation. It is the very goal of the path. Aphorism 23. One of the most important spiritual qualities that the yogi needs to develop within himself if he is to know success on the spiritual path is known as sthiti stapaka, or a deep sense of resilience. The spiritual path of yoga is long. It is difficult. It is not a path that is meant for everyone, but only the determined few. But with resilience, we can achieve success on this path. Always be resilient in your practice of yoga spirituality, and you will know God. Aphorism 34. Through yoga, daily meditation, a healthy lifestyle, being an ethical person, and expressing loving compassion toward all, choose to make this present life a vehicle for spiritual renewal and rejoicing. These are the essential practices of Sanatana Dharma. Take full advantage of the precious gift of having a human form of life by incorporating these practices into your daily routine. Aphorism 37 from Living Dharma. When the Avatara, the incarnation of God, arrives in this world, he appears to our vision as a person standing against the very element of time itself. Time is forced to a standstill as a result of the very gravitas of his presence. The darkness recedes. The sun of Dharma illumines all the world. The demonic know the stark reality of God's power with more assurance than they know even their own subjective existence. The demonic tremble at his presence. The devotees rejoice, and reality itself bows at his feet. Victory is Bhagavan's alone. Aphorism 48. The ideal ruler is a natural-born leader who personifies the dual qualities of administrative prowess and advanced spiritual attainment. The greatest leader cannot merely have practical political wisdom alone. Neither can he merely have spiritual insight alone. He must possess both simultaneously. He is a philosopher king, a warrior priest, a sage ruler. He wields both the sword of state and the sacred staff of the wise person. This is the Chakravartin, the perfect monarch. The earth has been blessed with the presence, the divine presence, and guidance of many such Chakravartins in the past. May we witness the rapid ascendancy of such a Chakravartin soon again. Aphorism 54 from the book Living Dharma. Depression, existential angst, and a deep sense of meaninglessness have overcome a large number of people in our present age of conflict, the Kali Yuga. This present state has been brought about due to the systematic despiritualization of every aspect of human culture that has been instigated by the tiny, corrupt elite who presently control our societies. The ultimate cure for society's present crisis of depression and meaninglessness is for the people to begin to reverse this ongoing destruction of reality and to re-embrace a life of meaning, a life of the spirit, a life of Dharma. Our greatest task today is to reconstruct a pure Vedic civilization. Let us work actively and practically to restore Dharma in our society and in our own lives. Let us make this a world of beauty and well-being once again. Aphorism 56. The only valid alternative to the destructiveness of materialism, consumerism, and greed is a worldview and culture based upon authentic spirituality. Attempting to fight these destructive materialistic tendencies with only further materialism, such as with Marxism, atheism, capitalism, and socialism, is self-defeating. It is like attempting to stop a fire by hurling matches into it. We cannot fight the ravages of materialism with yet more materialism, but only with Dharma spirituality. Dharma spirituality is the only effective and true idealism in our age. Aphorism 70. The follower of Sanatana Dharma views nature as a manifestation of God's creative power and energy, Shakti, and as being inherently good. The Dharmi, that is the follower of Dharma, approaches nature with love and acceptance, and lives in intimate harmony and environmental integration with his natural surroundings. A large part of what it means to practice yoga is to be in love with nature and to yearn to be in nature whenever possible. Yogis thus yearn for pristine forested areas. To enjoy the full yoga experience is to practice yoga and meditation in nature. Aphorism 90 from the book Living Dharma. Nature is not a scientific specimen. Nature is a living being, a mother, a woman, a goddess, whom we are to respect, love, and nurture, as she so patiently nurtures us. Whenever possible, practice meditation and yoga deep within nature, being lovingly enveloped by her beauty, healing energies, and grace. She will inspire and sustain you in your practice. She is a hidden yet beautifully nurturing guru. Aphorism 101. Dharma economics favors an economic system that is localized, values-based, spiritually centered, and that fosters the wondrous engine of individual human creativity without destroying the inherent good of the human spirit and of the earth. Positive economic growth meets people's essential needs without encouraging the poisonous excesses of greed and selfishness. Dharma completely favors the development of small-scale, localized free enterprise and small businesses, as well as economic policies that will encourage the unbridled unleashing of the individual person's creative potential. Dharma is, however, opposed to the creation of large-scale, impersonal, multinational corporatism. The demonic ideologies of both socialism and capitalism are thus at odds with the natural way. Vedic philosophy thus rejects both socialism and capitalism in favor of an economics that is based upon the natural, upon justice, and upon freedom. Aphorism 114. To help another person deepen their knowledge and experience of God is what it means to show true love toward that person. This is the highest of all benevolence. Helping someone spiritually is the most meaningful form of compassion. Aphorism 121. A true yogi does not poison his body, mind, and spirit with such intoxicating substances as alcohol, marijuana, cigarettes, ayahuasca, or any other mind-altering drug. Such harmful drugs deeply ruin the psyche, diminish inner strength, open one's mind to dark influences, and lead to a mind that is incapable of the sharpness, discernment, and focus necessary to lead a life of wisdom and virtue. The fallen yogi is seeking to obscure reality by abusing intoxicants, and is thus only a yogi for show. The true yogi, on the other hand, is seeking a clear and vivid vision of reality. Choose to be a true yogi, and you will achieve the greatest goal of yoga. Aphorism 149. An atheist is someone who falsely projects the source of his own experience of suffering onto a purportedly non-existent villain in the sky. The atheist cannot admit the fact that he is himself the source of his own suffering, and that he is also the potential source of his own enlightenment. Thus, the atheist blames a God that he claims he does not even believe in. The atheist is simply a person who is in pain, and who does not possess the knowledge, the sincerity, or the humility to cope with it. Aphorism 158. Once we have experienced Sriman Narayana intimately and have tasted deeply the sweet presence of God in our lives on a consistent basis through dedicated devotional meditation, we have then accessed the source of all reality. All achievements that are truly worth having will then lay like jewels at our feet. When we have God, we have everything. Aphorism 168 from the book Living Dharma. Wealth is eventually squandered. Beauty fades with time. Our possessions are all lost in the end. Power diminishes, health dissipates. Material reality itself meets its final dissolution in the divine cosmic dance of Lord Shiva. But a love that is spiritually based, that is forever. Learn how to love the divine first, then your family and your people, and all sentient beings, and you will know the eternal. Aphorism 196. Beauty is not merely in the eye of the beholder. Beauty is not just what you see with your eyes or detect with your senses. Beauty in its purest form is an experience of a transcendent metaphysical phenomenon. It is an essential attribute and power, Shakti, of the divine. When you experience beauty in its deepest essence, you are experiencing God. At that point, you are not the beholder. Rather, beauty is beholding you. Aphorism 211. True love begins with the source of all things. True love toward human beings and toward all of creation has its basis only in love of the divine. It is only in loving God that we can claim to truly love God's creation. Otherwise, we are pouring water on the individual leaves of the tree without watering the all-important root. God is the root of all reality. Aphorism 283. The ultimate revolutionary undertaking of the 21st century will be the thorough dismantling of materialism itself. Aphorism 368. Do not look for justice in government. Do not look for fairness in legislation. Do not look for culture in Hollywood or for accurate news in the media. Do not look for truth and objectivity in academia. Do not look for meaningful fellowship on the internet. Do not look for love in a bar. Do not look for enlightenment in a drug. You will never find the real in the unreal. Only the words of the enlightened masters can reveal what is real to us. Aphorism 394. Truth never seeks unity with untruth, but only seeks unity unto itself. And finally, one more aphorism, and this is aphorism number 134. Our world is not without meaning. Our future is not without hope. Though the darkness of the Kali Yuga and a resultant civilizational crisis has now descended upon us, the sun of Dharma will soon be seen again. There is no cloud that can obscure our vision of the sun forever. We will live to see the sun of Dharma triumphant again, and to see a golden age of compassion, true culture, and the natural way be firmly re-established. The International Sanatana Dharma Society is the movement that will bring about such a restoration of Dharma in the world today. Evam bhavatu. May it be so. Very good. Again, what I have been reading to you have been just a tiny number of aphorisms from this wonderful book called Living Dharma, which is put out indeed by the International Sanatana Dharma Society. It is a book that you can get in a variety of places, certainly on Amazon. You can also get this book through dharmacentral.com as well. And again, it's 400 aphorisms in total, of which we read a fraction. I'm not sure how many we read, maybe not even 2% or so. Small number of the aphorisms that are found in this book. And all the other aphorisms as well are just as inspiring, just as interesting, just as amazing as the ones that we read now. This is a book that was a labor of love. It was something that came to me in bits and pieces over many years. Sometimes one aphorism would be revealed to me and I would quickly write it down. Sometimes several would be revealed and I would write them down. Sometimes time would go by and no aphorisms would come to me. And again, in just a very organic way like this, I wrote down these aphorisms in the form of this book, Living Dharma. So I hope that when you have a chance, you will get this book. And I guarantee you will find this book inspiring in so many ways. So with that, I'm going to stop here and see now if there are any questions. If there are any questions specifically about any of these aphorisms, that would be nice. That would be very, very good, actually. But truthfully, any questions that you have about Sanatana Dharma, very specifically, I would be more than happy to answer. So please feel free to ask your questions, and I will certainly answer them for you. Very good. Here is a good question from Garuda Das. Thank you for your guidance, and Mercy Acharya-ji, can you please explain how we are to approach those who are deceived by the cult of progress and science? How do we convince them of the lie? Excellent question. Excellent question. And this is the answer. Actually, I'll give you the exact answer. No speculation involved. You use fire against fire, i.e., if you find individuals who are a little bit too materialistic and scientifically oriented, who think that they are intellectuals, who think that they are using reason in order to disprove, let's say, the spiritual worldview, well, you use those very same tactics and techniques to disprove their worldview. So in other words, the idea of progress. Well, progressivism is indeed one of the biggest lies of the really 19th, 20th, 21st century. How do you prove this? Very simply, empirically and historically so. You show how what is termed progress is in actuality, let's say, the increasing sophistication of technology alone. But as far as human beings themselves progressing as human beings, that is becoming more virtuous, more good, more spiritual, more content, more happy, more compassionate, etc. What we have seen in the last several hundred years empirically is that the opposite is the case. People have not been progressing, they have been regressing. So thus what we have had as far as actual human beings and the quality of life for the last several hundred years has been not evolution but devolution. And again, to show this is very easy. You just have to show, you can just show thousands of instances in history where indeed life has gotten worse. For that matter, for the last year, life has gotten worse. We have not had progress. There's empirical reality in the face, smacking the face of any atheist, any materialist scientist. So I hope that answers the question somewhat. And please give me a moment. I'm going to see if there are any other questions here. Here is a nice question. Sri Acharyaji, thank you for the satsanga. Absolutely my pleasure. Unfortunately, I grew up without knowing my mother. Would meditating on Lakshmi and performing the Mahalakshmi mantra help me to heal this wound? Om Shri Mahalakshmi Namaha. Om Shri Mahalakshmi Namaha. This is the mantra that this individual is referring to. Very beautiful, very powerful mantra in which we are indeed appealing to Lakshmi Devi. And let me just say several things to you. First of all, you say you grew up without knowing your mother. You have my condolences and my sympathy. It's terrible either not knowing one or both parents, or knowing them and they're terrible people. That happens a lot too, actually. But in any of these cases, it's always a very, very sad thing, and I'm very sorry that that happened to you. Indeed, we all need a mother, we all need a father. There's no way around this, and we need both. There's no such thing as being raised only by a mother, only by a father. Any individual needs both, period. You need the masculine and the feminine in your life as you're growing up. And this being the case, even though I assume that you're an adult now, yes, it's not too late to fill that vacuum in your heart. And indeed, you stated it very, very wonderfully. Understanding the feminine aspect of God, understanding that God is indeed Shakti Shaktiman, that God is Shriman Narayana, Lakshmi Narayana, that in God there is both the feminine and masculine absolute. And indeed, in appealing specifically to that feminine absolute, you can begin to replenish that feeling that you have been missing for so long, that you indeed grew up without a mother. So indeed, please turn to and appeal to Lakshmi Devi as much as possible. If you can, even have an image of her on your altar, either a statue or a picture, a painting, a poster, something. Indeed, say the Mahalakshmi mantra. And in this way, ask for Lakshmi herself to fulfill this role for you now and to be your mother, because that's who she is. So I hope that answers the question for you. Sorry, give me a moment, please. I'm looking at these questions. All right, here's an interesting question from Varsaga. How did the Buddha reach liberation by himself despite living in the Kali Yuga? Good question, actually, and I believe I understand what you're asking with this question. Several things to be said about this. First of all, he was not by himself. That's actually not true. For the first 6 years after he left his kingdom and after he had become a yogi, Oh, he had gurus. Oh, he had fellow practitioners. He lived in the forest with other yogis, with other individuals who were seeking liberation. He had satsangha. He had good association. He had teachers, etc., etc. So that's known. That's historically known. That's written in the Pali text, in the Tripitaka. That's written in other places as well. So he was not quite alone. Toward the very end, indeed, he was alone. But at that stage, all that he was doing was pure meditation in and of itself anyway. So truthfully, when you're steeped in meditation, by definition, you are indeed alone. It is simply yourself and God there in meditation. So, yeah, that's the first thing to be said, is that he wasn't quite alone. The other thing is that, indeed, it is possible to achieve liberation in the Kali Yuga. If it were not, then I shouldn't be doing this live stream. If it were not possible, then I shouldn't be writing books. If it were not possible, and on and on. No, it is indeed extremely possible to achieve liberation in the Kali Yuga. It is, on the one hand, a little bit more difficult, quite a bit more difficult. On the other hand, by God's grace, it is also easier within the context of the Kali Yuga. It's more difficult in that our environment is, by almost definition, anti-spiritual, so thus not giving us the inspiration that we would otherwise have derived if we were living in a different yuga. But on the other hand, the process for achieving liberation in this age, the Kali Yuga, is a process that, at least officially, technically, is quite easy. And that is by indeed meditating upon the names of God, Hari Nama, quite literally the name, the Nama of Hari, of God. And this is how we achieve liberation. Indeed, this is why, as you know, I teach all of my students and anyone who will listen to me to indeed meditate upon the names of God, Om Namo Narayanaya, or indeed any of the official names of God, the authorized names of God that are revealed in the Vedic scriptures. So it is very much possible to achieve liberation in the Kali Yuga. For the first 5,200 years of the Kali Yuga that has progressed thus far, many people have achieved liberation, and many people will achieve liberation in the future. So I hope that answers the question. Very good. Nick, I see your question here on Hiranyakashipu. I can answer this for you, but if you don't mind, maybe we'll talk and I'll answer this via Skype or something, because the answer will be very, very long. But there is an exact answer to your question about Hiranyakashipu. But again, it would take at least 10, 15 minutes to answer it. And for that reason, let's talk and I'll answer this for you. Very good. Good. Alexander Phillips asks, does it matter which form we worship of Krishna? For example, does worshiping Vitoba or Jagannatha result in different spiritual fruits? Very good. Good question. No, Krishna is Krishna. And there are indeed many, many different aspects of Krishna. At the same time, while it's true that worshiping any aspect of Krishna will bring us to Krishna, worshiping any aspect of Krishna will give us liberation, and liberation in the fullest sense of that term, meaning both self-realization and God consciousness. And by worshiping any aspect of Krishna, it is true that we will enter Vaikuntha. At the same time, there is a subtle distinction in mood between what aspect of Krishna we worship versus another aspect. So there are 5 primary, let's say, ways in which we can engage in transcendental eternal relationship with Krishna. And I'm not going to go through all these. You can look these up yourself. And the point being that if we worship Krishna as Bala Krishna, for example, if we worship Krishna as a baby, and ourselves in the mood of the parent of Krishna, well, then certainly we will have a very specific relationship with Krishna versus worshiping Krishna as a friend, versus worshiping Krishna in a more conjugal mood, etc., etc. So there is indeed some subtle distinction that is there upon liberation, but worshiping any of the aspects of Krishna will take us to Krishna. And that's the important thing. So I hope that answers the question for you. Very good. Here's an interesting question, and I'll answer this. Namaste Acharyaji, why was South India not part of Aryavarta, despite having so many Vedic sites and temples? Good question, and that actually is not true. It was part of Aryavarta. You see, when we speak of Aryavarta, we need to understand the concept of empire. We need to understand the concept of a capital versus a state versus nation. We have to understand all these terms. So thus, when we speak of Aryavarta, we are indeed speaking of something that was the Vedic heartland. And the Vedic heartland, of necessity, just like the heart is localized, the heart is not the entire person. The heart is not here and here and here and everywhere. The heart is localized, but at the same time, everything is connected to the heart. Everything is dependent upon the heart. In the same way, Aryavarta was the heart of the Vedic Empire. And the Vedic Empire, if we're talking about roughly 5,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, extended at a sheer minimum from Ireland to the Philippines, from what we today call Central Asia and Siberia, as far south as beyond Sri Lanka, to Kumarikandam. Kumarikandam is a lost continent that existed south of Sri Lanka that is no longer there. So thus, when we speak about the Vedic sphere of influence, in other words, what Aryavarta was the heart of, South India was included. So it is for this reason that you find so many ancient temples, not only in South India, but in Cambodia, in Vietnam, in the Philippines, in Indonesia, arguably even in South America, etc. So yes, Aryavarta was a global empire and included South India. So I hope that answers the question. And I'm looking at the time, as I always have to say, sadly, I am now no longer going to be answering questions in the exact sequence because we have little time, and I want to go down a little bit further and see if there are questions that need to be answered. So please give me just a few moments to look at these. This I can answer very, very quickly. Namaste Acharyaji. Thank you for your guidance and wisdom. My pleasure. Are the solar and lunar dynasties still around today? Absolutely. Easy answer. They absolutely are. And indeed, hopefully in time, they will no longer be hidden. Very good. Very nice. Here's an interesting question. If we achieve liberation, are we still surrendered to Krishna, Narayana, and what role do they play after liberation? Is God a part of us after liberation? Thank you. And you say you are golden. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Once we surrender, surrender is surrender. It's something that never ends. So indeed, the idea is not that we simply surrender to Krishna or to Narayana as some sort of, let's say, mode of sadhana, as some sort of practice to give us liberation, but rather the idea is that pure and perfect surrender at the feet of Krishna is itself liberation. This is the goal. In the same way that I speak about bhakti, how bhakti is both upaya and artha, to use the technical terms. It is both the means, but it is also the goal. It's not that we practice bhakti or surrender simply as a means, but then once we achieve liberation, then we leave that behind. No, devotion and surrender are the goal of liberation. So interestingly, once we achieve liberation in pure devotion to Krishna, and we do so in absolute surrender to Krishna, If anything, for all of eternity, we simply deepen and deepen and deepen our surrender to Krishna, to Narayana. And this literally goes on for all of eternity. So it's not that we achieve liberation by surrender to Krishna. Once we have the liberation, then we leave that surrender behind. No, then and only then can we now fully explore the ecstasy of that surrender at the feet of Bhagavan, of God. So I hope that answers the question. Very good. Yes, I will answer this actually, and indeed in brief, as you kind of indicate here. You ask, Namaste Acharyaji, could you please say a few words about the ancient Slavic religion and the Vedas of that region? Absolutely. The ancient Slavic religion, and I mean in its pristine form, that is pre-Christian, pre-Abrahamic. That is the religion of what now is Russia, but much of what is called Eastern Europe, Ukraine, etc., all these areas. If you go back far enough, it was indeed Vedic. It was Vedic. The same gods were worshipped, the same concepts were there, the same goal was there, the same, let's say, general cultural, ethical norms were there, etc. So indeed, ancient Slavic religion, if you go back far enough, was indeed non-distinct from what we call Sanatana Dharma or the Vedic tradition today. So indeed, the ancient Slavic people followed the Veda. And they had both the original Veda, but also, let's say, extensions of that as well. So indeed, individuals who are today attempting to restore, to revive ancient Slavic religion, this is why, like with Asatru, so many of them turn to Vedic religion because they see themselves that they are non-distinct. So we find a lot of people who are in the process right now of reconstructing ancient Slavic religion, and they are turning to the Vedas for help with this. And we encourage them to do so because, again, just like with Asatru and Celtic religion and ancient Greco-Roman religion, Slavic pre-Christian spirituality is a sister religion of Sanatana Dharma. And we support you in every way with what you are doing. So I hope that helps and answers the question. Very good. And Nick, thank you for your understanding. I see your message here. I'm trying to see if there is one very short question that I can answer. Doesn't look like it, sadly. And at this point, we have 1 minute left anyway, so possibly I will stop here. I have several people thanking me for answering their questions. Absolutely my honor and my privilege to do so. Again, thank you very much for being here. Again, what we did today was we went through aphorisms from this book, from Living Dharma, which is a book that is one of approximately 10 books now that are put out by the International Sanatana Dharma Society. When you have a chance, please get this book, and I assure you that you will be very happy that you did so. The book is available at dharmacentral.com. It's available on Amazon as well. And just to repeat this with your kind indulgence, again, the International Sanatana Dharma Society is the movement that is sponsoring these live streams. We are a nonprofit 501c3 religious movement. And as a result, like all nonprofits, we need your help. We need your generous donations. And we are in the midst right now, from now until December 31st, of our year-end fundraiser. Every year we do this, as again, do many nonprofits, almost every nonprofit to my knowledge. And we need your help. If you can, if you could be so kind, and only if you can do so. If you yourself are experiencing financial hardship, then please, don't worry about it. But if you can give a donation, it can be as little as you want. It can be as big as you want. Please go to dharmacentral.com, and hopefully someone will once again put the link directly in the chat for donations. Please go to dharmacentral.com. Please donate generously. Please give whatever you can, either as a one-time donation, or please feel free to become a member a monthly tithing member of the ISDS, and in that way help us every month by giving a certain amount every month, $10, $20, $100, whatever you wish to give. But again, please help us during this time of the year when we're having our year-end fundraiser. And in that way, help us to continue with all the many, 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 many dozens of projects that we are engaged in to restore Sanatana Dharma to the world on every level of human experience. With that, I thank you again for being here. Please join us again next Monday as we have our next live stream. And with that, namaste. Jaya Shriman Narayana. Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Jaya Shri Guru. Sanatana Dharma Jayate. Dharma Rashtra Jayate. Surya Vangsha Jayate. International Sanatana Dharma Society Jayate. Om Hri Om. And with that, everyone, I ask you to please, all of you, take very good care of yourselves in every way until we meet again next Monday.